Connie was always dark, and but not dark as the Mexicans. But maybe she had a little dirt along with this day, because we'd go home really quite dirty. One of the most funs of picking fruit out in our orchards was lunchtime. Oh, they'd look forward. All the kids would look forward to lunchtime. Earl was real clever. He'd have us work real fast and keep prolonging the lunch hour so that we'd get more picking done, because it seemed like after we ate lunch things dwindle, and the kids would get tired, and they'd want to go home. Another story about Helen I must tell. We've laughed about it, and I don't think she enjoys it too much, but she can see the fun side of it too. Helen used to be a good picker, really good picker in all the kinds of fruits. But after lunch, she was through, and we'd see her sitting under the trees down the row, and no matter how we tried, she was through. She had picked her share and then eaten her lunch, and after lunch, that was it. Well, fun things happened in the orchard. Connie, can you think of something that we should talk about that we haven't?
Yeah, I can remember one thing. You may not want to talk about it, but I've heard the story many times about you going down through the orchards on the tractor.
Oh, yes. That is really a story. It's lived. This story has really lived through the years. Those who had watched it and those who had heard it, it has really lived. We were out real early in the morning, like we always were. We left home around 5 o'clock every morning, and it wasn't even light. We had to wait. We'd be starting to pick before we could really see the fruit on the trees. But I used to drive tractor, I used to drive trucks, and I was on a tractor this certain morning with 2 trailers loaded with boxes. And Helen was about 4 years old, and she was riding on the very back trailer. We were up at the very top of the orchard, and by a big rock. The rock is still there, and I always think of this when I see it. And I started to make the turn down around the rock into the orchard proper, because we'd been way up at the top. And I don't know what happened, but the tractor got away from me and went down over the hill. Helen, bless her, was smart enough or scared enough, I don't know which, but she jumped off as the tractor started down. Well, it seemed to go faster and faster, and Earl says to this day, I must have put my foot on the gas instead of the brake, because by the time the tractor stopped, I had lost all the boxes and had uprooted 3 trees in order to stop. And those that were watching in horror at the top of the hill have told this story, that Earl said, there goes my tractor, my trailers, the boxes, and my wife.
In that order?
In that order. Absolutely in that order. And it's been a real laugh in our family. You know, Helen was only 4 years old when that happened. And believe it or not, I have never driven a tractor since. Trucks, yes. I stayed to my job on the trucks, and many of the times and many are the loads, big loads that I have driven down over the good earth, full of baskets of peaches and baskets of apricots and cherries, and even driven the truck clear to the cars, railroad cars that we were loading to send out of state. Oh, those were really the days.
What
Yeah.
about the trips that we used to take as cherry pickers?
Yes, that was a goal that we always looked forward to. We, the kids knew that after the harvest was over, that they had a trip. I won't call it a vacation because the trips were always made in one day. But we would load all our family into the big blue truck, and the neighbors, kids who had picked for us, and I could name them, but it would take time. And we would go on a trip, a day's trip. Well, it might be to Black Rock, that is located in Salt Lake. I mean the lake itself, where we would go swimming, or to up to what was the name of it? I can't think of it. Right. In Salt Lake, at the mines.
The salt mines? Great Salt Lake, I remember that.
Yes, the Great Salt Lake, but Bingham's mines, where they were working for copper up there, and we made a trip there. Trips were made to Timpanogos Cave and Lagoon, but we always had lots of fun and lots to eat. I would, Earl would buy the food and I would prepare it, and enough for everyone. So we did have fun during our harvest.
I can remember lots of fun trips that we took as a family, 9 of us, cramped in a small car. Do you want to tell us about that, Mother?
Yes, I'd like to tell about that. We had it was a green Dodge, wasn't it?
Uh-huh.
And Earl and I had always thought that we ought to do things that the kids would remember that we had done together, another togetherness. And so we planned these trips. 9 kids in a green Dodge. And we had, each of them had their number, because every time we stopped, we had to count out, they had to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and Earl and I, 8 and 9, to make sure we had all the kids back in the car all the time, so we wouldn't leave them. But we had some wonderful trips. We made a trip up to the northwest, and it's so beautiful up there. And I remember visiting the lumber camps. Can you remember it, Connie? You were quite little, and you rode most of the time upside down, your head on the seat with your feet on the top of the top of the car. And
So that's what happened to me.
Oh, yeah, that's probably what's the matter with you, my dear. But they all seemed to find their spot in the car. Darn Janet and Brent, no matter how crowded we were, they always found a place in the car to sleep, part of the time. On the floor was usually the place for both of them. And sleep they had to have, and sleep they got. But I must tell about this visiting the lumber camp, because we do have pictures of it, and it's fun to remember. There we met one of the men that was working, and he invited Earl to ride with him up to the lumber, where they were cutting the lumber, and he was gone for quite a while, and we visited down there among the family with the rest of us, and they had this man that took Earl left his dog down there with us, and this dog was exactly the same color as Brent's hair. And we took a picture of the two of them together, Brent and the dog. I always remember that. Oh, we had a lot of fun on that trip. We went to down the coast. I think that's the trip. We went into Victoria, Canada, wasn't it? By ferry. Connie doesn't remember, she was too little, but I'm quite sure it was. And then we went down the coast and stopped in different beaches, and the kids did their swimming. And, oh, it was just a lot of fun. But, oh, I must tell you about when we visited Hollywood. Molly had decided she wanted to really doll up in Hollywood. It must have been a dream she'd always had. So crowded as we were, and the clothes we had to take, Molly had to take about 4 great, big, full, starched petticoats and to put under her big bouffant skirt. You ought to watch me. I'm doing all this with my hands. You could only see how I'm explaining it all. Well, her dad about had a fit when we started to load the car, but she sneaked, and she really did a lot of sneaking. She put them inside our pillowcases and took the pillows out so that we had the starch slips to sleep on, part of us instead of our pillows. She figured that way she could smuggle them in. Well, in Hollywood, she dolled up. Oh, she really dolled up. And we went to the first Cinerama there in Hollywood that we had ever been to. And Molly walked very stately down the street. And I guess she really accomplished her purpose, because everyone turned around and looked at her. And I'm sure she felt she had really done what she wanted to. When we came out of the theater, Helen accidentally knocked the heel off from her shoe. Well, our car was parked quite a ways away, and no way would Helen consent to walk to the car. She was there. She wouldn't move. She wouldn't budge. She just set her teeth, and there she was. I'm not going. Well, so of course, part of us had to stay with Helen. Couldn't leave her there in front of the theater in Hollywood. But Earl went and got the car and drove by, and we put Helen in the car and took her back to the motel. So that's one of the incidents we have to remember too, along with our trip. We took other trips too. We went to part of us, by the time we had the World's Fair in Seattle, Washington, part of our family had left home, and others had jobs, and I think, as I remember, those that went with us at that time was Brent and Dave and Connie and Molly, right?
Right.
And but we had a lot of fun on that trip too. I think we were really brave, but we were in the camper at this time, and we had a lovely camper, and it was brand new, and we enjoyed that camper. But we drove into the parking area at the right outside the World's Fair, and we were brave enough to leave the camper there for 3 whole days, and we'd go back and sleep and cook our meals and camped right there, and we could look out of our windows and see that Space Needle. I don't think anyone would ever dare do that but we certainly did it and had lots of fun, didn't we?
Mm-hmm, you bet.
Another trip I must tell about that Earl doesn't like me to tell about, but I'm going to. we had decided to take a fishing trip. We went on little fishing trips up to Uinta and around, and this was to be up to the Uintas too, where there's beautiful lakes, and we were looking forward to this trip. Bishop Jensen, bless his memory, had decided to go with us, and by the way, I know it was his last fishing trip before he passed away. His daughter Margaret was going along with us too, and lo and behold, when we got ready to pack, the back of the old blue truck again, Earl had been down to my brother Earl's home and brought their horse back, named Old Bill. Well, I wasn't too concerned about it because I figured he'd put Old Bill in a horse trailer. But you can't guess where he put Old Bill, right in the back of the truck, along with all the rest of us. He had put a board to try to separate us, but it was just about a foot wide board, and I don't see how he figured it would really help. Of course, we had our bed rolls, we had our sleeping bags, we had the food, and Earl wanted me to ride in the front with him, and I said, no way, I'm going to stay back here with the kids. I was really quite put out. So Bishop Jensen rode in the front with his daughter Margaret, and we loaded in the back with Old Bill. Well, I wish the boys could tell the story because they really can tell it. And Old Bill, as we go around the corner, would brace his feet and try to keep from coming on us. When he decided he had to do his duty, he would do it right along in the truck, and the wind would blow the what shall I call it? Older, nothing. It would blow the wet from what Old Bill was doing right on our faces along
That tells it all, Mother.
Oh, okay. I was really burned up. I never slept the whole time we were up there because I was worrying about the trip back home. Well, Earl says that was the craziest thing he ever did in all his life, and I hope he forgives me for telling this, but it does stand out as a very important trip that we took. Well, what other trips?
Black Rock,
Well, I mentioned Black Rock.
Yellowstone.
We visited Black Rock with our other cherry pickers and fruit pickers, but we also went there quite often with our family. And can you remember how salty that water was?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very salty. But we made trips to Yellowstone Park too. We made them in the truck. We made them in the car. And this one time we took several of our family, outside our own family. Marion went, and Jody Budge went, and the boys' girlfriends went, and everybody went. And we just had lots of fun up there fishing too. By this time we had been able to afford a good-looking boat, sailboat, and we had lots of fun fishing. That was just another trip of togetherness that I'd like to relate. Oh, I must tell you another fun thing about Helen. We've all just loved Helen to pieces because she's really created a lot of fun things for us and did a lot of things that's made our trips fun, not knowing she was really doing them. This happened on one of our trips to Northwest or the coast or somewhere, but I remember we were outside of Seattle, Washington, and the boat races were on. The national boat races. Do you remember that? No, you were too little, Connie. I keep thinking you were one of the older ones. So Seattle was just crowded with people who had come into the national boat races. Well, we traveled miles and miles trying to find a motel. Kids were also tired, and as usual, Janet and Brent were asleep in the bottom of the car. And we finally decided we just couldn't find a place. So we traveled around till we found a pasture, and it looked like it was quite green and nice, and of course it was in the middle of the night, so to speak, and we decided that we could pull out the bedrolls and the sleeping bags and sleep there. Well, right across the fence was a bull, and Helen spent all her night, not a wink of sleep, standing by the fence watching the bull because she was afraid it was going to jump the fence and come over where we were. Just another little tale.
When I think about my childhood and even even some of the things that we do today in my own home, I think about the holiday traditions that we had. Two that stand out in my mind probably the most are Christmas and Easter. And I'd like to have you relate the incidences and things that happened in your own voice so that we can enjoy them.
Yes, I would like to do that too, Connie. We have talked about going away for fun, but we had really a lot of fun at home too. I'd like to talk about Christmas, I think, first. Our Christmases were really a tradition that had been carried down from living at home in the storybook house. And I'm sure every member of my family there, Lucille, Mary, Helen, Flora, Reuben, Earl, Raymond, and myself, have all carried this tradition. And it was so much fun, and I must tell you about it. Of course, we prepare for Christmas, and usually we had a program over in the church, Christmas Eve, and the primary would usually give the program. And I can remember making dresses for all my girls, new Christmas dresses, which went on for years and years and years. They always had to have a Christmas dress. But along with their Christmas dress, I had to make costumes for every one of them because they were in the program, or on the program at the church. Then we would come home, and I do remember once that Santa Claus always came to these programs and sang with the kids, and it was a tradition that the ward had. And I can remember losing Brent one Christmas Eve, and we got ready to go home, and no Brent anywhere. And we found him up in the field behind the church, and he had been trying to follow Santa Claus, all by his wee self. Well, we come home from the programs, and the kids would hang up their socks, and we would, we'd try to hurry them off to bed, but it seemed like they never wanted to quiet down and go to bed. Right here, I'd like to say that Connie, I don't believe, ever had a bed of her own. She slept with everybody, even the boys. Never knew where Connie was going to land. But finally, when it get quiet, why, the gifts were put in by the tree, and we would prepare for Christmas morning. It was traditional in our home, in Storybook House, that we would never see the Christmas tree until Christmas morning. But we, in our homes, as we have had our families, we've put the Christmas tree in a few days early so they could enjoy it. But on Christmas morning, oh, it would be so much fun. We would, the kids would get up, and it seemed like we just never ever got any sleep. They were up before we could hardly get the lights turned off. And with that many, you can imagine what a noise and what a lot of fun it was. But we had to have breakfast. And I've heard the kids say we always had to have a big breakfast the whole year. And I know that's the way we felt when we were kids at home. It had to be a good breakfast, and the dishes had to be washed and put away before we could go into the Christmas tree. And all the kids had to be dressed. No night clothes went in their pajamas and nightgowns. They had to be dressed for the day. And then Dad would go in, and the kid's dad, Earl, would go in and turn on the lights and get everything ready, and we always had a fire in the fireplace, and then
And a blanket over the door.
Oh yes, and a blanket over the door that led into the rooms where the Christmas tree was, and no one could go peeking. We just saw that everyone watched each other and no peeking.
And we used to have Christmas stockings for our pets.
Yeah, that's right, we did. That was fun, wasn't it? Well, and then we had to line up according to height, not age, height. Because I remember as the years went by, I'd get closer to going in first, because the kids would get taller and taller, and I would be the one getting down lower each time, being the little mom. We'd line up that way, and we still do. Those that come home to spend Christmas Eve, we still line up that way. And then when Dad was all ready, down would come the blanket, and in we go to the Christmas tree. With so many kids, you can just imagine what the tree looked like. The gifts were halfway out into the room, and then the fun would start, hearing the laughter and the comments, and the fun of opening their gifts. What have you got to add about Christmas?
I think you covered everything. It was a very special time in my life, and I'm doing the same things with my family that we did in our home, growing up as children in Pleasant View. Maybe you could tell us about Easter.
Yes, but before I start Easter, I never thought to tell you that after Dad Cragun passed away, Mother Cragun always came down to our Christmas, and we enjoyed her so much. One year we gave her a parakeet. Do you remember, Connie? And she said, "Is this for me? Can I take it home?" And she really loved that parakeet.
Mother enjoyed the parakeet for some time, but finally found out she was allergic to him. One day she came down to our place with the bird and said, "I guess I will have to give him back." We had him on the patio one day and forgot to lock his cage, and he flew away. The next day he returned and came back into his cage. That silly bird.